So many people are leaving Los Angeles and California in general by the thousands, record numbers. In fact, over the last couple of years, we've had a net loss in migration. You've probably heard it in the news. But why? There's so many reasons to love living in Los Angeles. And if you check out some of my other videos, you'll see the reasons why. But in this video, we're going to go over the top 5 reasons of why people are deciding to leave Los Angeles in droves. All right, we're going to start off with the #1 driver of why so many people are living in Los Angeles. No, you don't have to wait to the end of the video like so many other people make you do. We're going to say the #1 reason why people are leaving LA is because of the cost of living. Of course, shock, no surprise, right? If you're thinking about making the move to LA, or maybe you're watching this thinking of moving out and this is just hitting the right spot, it is expensive to live in Los Angeles. Now, we're not just talking about housing. You've heard news stories on how expensive housing is in LA, which we're going to get into, but it's really in all aspects of life. And we're going to hit the top points, the top things that would affect your day-to-day expenses and your life here in Los Angeles. Now, California is one of the most expensive states to live in, but believe it or not, Los Angeles is actually not the #1 city as far as expensive places to live in California. That's going to be left up to places like San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Barbara, and a couple of other regions. But LA is still really high on the list, and especially when you're comparing it to the rest of the United States. And we are going to start off with housing because, well, let's face it, if you're going to be living here, you need a roof over your head, and that is going to be your most expensive part of living. So, median price of a single-family home is going to be $959,000. And believe it or not, it is actually a little bit lower than it was last year. But that is expensive. I have family and friends that live elsewhere, real estate friends that live elsewhere, and I see what houses are going for, and this is pretty ridiculous of what a home is selling for. Now, we're not talking about your mansions or your large homes at $959,000. We're talking about maybe a 1,500 square foot home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, with a little bit of a lot, maybe like 6,000 square foot, but that's it. That is your median price. Now, if you're talking rental, your median price for rental is $2,950 a month. Now, that is what we're talking about is a condo or an apartment. We're not even talking about a single-family home. If you're looking to rent a single-family home, you're most looking at around $5,000 plus for a single-family house. And again, we're talking about maybe 3 bedrooms, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet. If you are wanting more information and a little bit more detail on the different costs of the different regions of Los Angeles, I suggest you check out my cost of living in LA video for more information on that. Let's jump into another expense that people face, especially in LA. We're a car culture here. We drive a lot, and that is the cost of gas. And the cost of regular gas is going to be $4.96 a gallon. We are in the summer. There is a summer blend tax in California and Los Angeles. They charge a little bit more, but in general, Los Angeles is going to have higher gas prices. And again, it really depends on which regions you're going into. If you're going in some of the more expensive places like Santa Monica or Beverly Hills, it'll even be higher than that. And again, I'm Dave Fine with the Real Estate Dads, a licensed real estate agent right here in Los Angeles. My team and I love helping people relocate to and from Los Angeles. So if that is you, someone thinking about making a move, make sure you reach out to us, phone, text, email. We've got your back when moving to LA. Now let's talk about sales tax. Sales tax is something that's going to affect everybody as they're in their daily lives, as you're making your purchases. And it's pretty high here in Los Angeles. We're talking about 9.5%. Now the state itself is, I believe, 7.5%, but each city then can add on and tack on more. And the city of Los Angeles is 9.5%. So every time you go to the store and then you see the price, you're going to need to add on another 9.5%. It is not like Oregon where you don't have any sales tax at all. So something to keep in mind when you're living or thinking about making the move to LA. Now, another expense you're going to need to be aware about when living in Los Angeles and California actually is the state income tax, which is a range here. It is not one of those states where you don't get to pay income tax. They do charge you here. The range is between 1% and 12.3%. Now, a lot of people fall in the middle, which is going to run you about 9.3% for your income tax. Now, this works a little bit differently, and you'll see here in the chart that you're going to first pay a base fee, a base tax, and then what they do is they tax you that percentage. Let's use that 9.3% figure because it's in the middle. They'll charge you 9.3% in addition to the base above the floor line of whatever range you're in. So for instance, if you are in that middle tier at 9.3%, you're going to be in a taxable income bracket of $66,296 to $338,639 if you're filing separately. And you'd be paying a base tax of $2,918.91 plus the 9.3% of the amount over the 66,295 base in that range. So you see there's a little bit of a scale here, and it's not 9.3% of your entire income, as you can see in this chart. Now, if you're filing jointly with somebody and you're in that middle tier of 9.3%, that means your taxable income bracket is $132,591 all the way to $677,298. And you have a base tax of $5,837.82 plus the 9.3% of the amount over the $132,590. So that's how the state income taxes work in California. And of course, living in Los Angeles, you'd be affected as well. Now we'll talk about property taxes. Now, it's not as high as in a lot of other places, and it doesn't get reassessed every year as property values goes up. There's a baseline of 1%, but I always tell people that it's really closer to 1.25% after you factor in the city and county taxes that are tacked on to your property tax rate. Now, the percentage is pretty low, but when you consider how much home prices are, your annual tax bill is actually quite high when you compare it to the rest of the country. But it doesn't get reevaluated on an annual basis. It gets reevaluated on the sale of the home, and then also if you do any additions to the property, or even sometimes when you do a big remodel, they'll reevaluate. But I'm not a CPA, I'm not a tax professional, so make sure you consult one when it comes to any types of tax situations. Now let's talk about childcare. This one actually rings home for me because my wife and I have 2 kids and we both work and we have to pay for childcare, which is in the form of daycare or kind of a preschool thing. So the younger they are, the more expensive it tends to be. So our 1-year-old, we were paying about $1,900 a month. And for our 4-year-old who was in his last year of daycare before going to kindergarten, we were paying around $1,100 a month. So it is quite expensive. Now, we weren't by any means going to one of the most expensive daycares in town, and we weren't going to one of the least expensive ones. And this was at a facility, a really nice place. They do have daycares that are in-home. Those tend to be a little bit less expensive. But nonetheless, compared to a lot of places in the country, is quite a bit more than what a lot of other people pay. And it does add to your expenses if you are having a family or if you're thinking about having a family soon. And since we are talking about kids, if you want a date night, we get a rare date night here and there. The cost of a babysitter varies, but in our experience, we're paying about $25 an hour. So you go out for 4 hours, you get another $100 that you're adding on to your restaurant bill, your movie bill, your bar bill, whatever you're going to go into. So you're going to factor that in, about $25 a month for babysitting. I'm sorry, $25 an hour. $25 a month would be incredible. Now let's talk car insurance, because again, we're car culture and everyone's driving in LA. We're talking about maybe $2,300 a year for car insurance, and that'll depend on the zip code, because if you are living in a zip code that has more break-ins, or if they determine there's more accidents for whatever reason in that area, then your car insurance would be higher. All right, the second biggest factor of why people are leaving Los Angeles is it's just too congested. There are so many people here. Now, if we're talking the city of Los Angeles, we're just under 4 million people. And if we're talking about the county of Los Angeles, we're just under 10 million people. That is a lot of people, especially if you're coming from a much smaller town. And let's face it, most cities and towns are going to be smaller than this. But it could be shocking, even from someone like myself, who born and raised in LA and has seen the population grow and have seen the explosions of buildings and concrete and glass everywhere during construction. It just gets to be quite overwhelming. There's a lot of people everywhere you go, whether you're trying to go to the supermarket, you're in the movies, you're going to a museum, you're at the park. All of this just, you feel a little bit tight and it's a little hard to breathe. And when you go to the beach, you have not just everyone who loves going to the beach who lives in LA, but you have all the tourism, so the beaches are fairly crowded. The hiking trails can be quite crowded, especially the more popular ones. And if you're not at the beach or if you're not in the mountains, you just feel a bit claustrophobic. And it's kind of funny because LA is so spread out. It's not like a San Francisco or New York or Chicago where you've got, your main cities and it's just a ton of skyscrapers and tall buildings. We do have that in our downtown LA area, but it's just the amount of, just the sheer size and the amount of buildings, the amount of multi-unit housing, the amount of people, the amount of cars, which I'm going to get into is one of our reasons of traffic, but because it deserves its own. but you just don't quite feel like you can spread your arms and just be free. And then it has an impact financially. It has an impact on parking prices. It has an impact on housing prices. It has an impact on your goods and services, because there's such a demand that people, they know they can charge more here because there's a demand for it, that the prices tend to be higher. If you haven't been to Los Angeles and you are thinking about making the move here, you're going to want to come check it out first to see if you can kind of handle how crowded and how congested it is pretty much everywhere you go. And there's really no more buildable space in Los Angeles. So now the main trend in construction is to go up. So we are seeing more vertical buildings, more multifamily buildings, just cramming and stuffing into all sorts of neighborhoods, just adding more people, adding more density, adding more traffic, adding more congestion with parking. You have to pay for parking wherever you go. It is becoming quite a problem, and people are just getting fed up with it and tired of it, and they're done. And so they're now leaving Los Angeles to find greener pastures and just somewhere where they can spread their wings. All right, the third reason I alluded to this is traffic. And believe it or not, traffic is basically becomes a way of life here. And for many people, they're done with that way of life. And they're tired of sitting on the roads, idling, going nowhere, just adding to the pollution that's already here in Los Angeles. And they're done. They're moving to places where it doesn't take an hour to go 12 miles, or they're moving to a place where if there is an accident on the freeway, it doesn't shut down the entire LA system. Or if they're doing construction, it doesn't shut down all of the roads. So, or trying to always find the secret ways and look at Google and cut in and out of traffic. People are just kind of tired of it. And you know, you're in LA, if you're sitting at a red light and the light turns green, you're immediately being honked at just to go, because people are in such a hurry because they are tired of driving, tired of sitting in traffic. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know traffic has become a big topic. And I've got to put it on this list because when you do talk to people leaving, one of the reasons after they say cost of living, too many people, traffic. I've born and raised here. I've gotten used to it. I find ways to deal with it. I sometimes meditate while I'm driving. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to music. I'm making phone calls, catching up with people. I'm actually curious if you live in LA or if you've been to LA and thinking about making the move here, how do you deal with traffic to keep you sane? Because Los Angeles is a whole nother animal. I've traveled and been to many other places in the country, and it's just crazy. We have some of the busiest freeway connections and street intersections in the world, and you're going to be dealing with it, especially if you're commuting to work, if you don't live in the same neighborhood where you work. And it can be aggravating. It adds to it adds another stress level that can be avoided if you move outside of Los Angeles. And part of LA can be stressful as it is because it's so expensive. You've got to make sure you're earning that money to keep up your housing and all your other expenses. And it can be a little bit of a hustle here, depending on the industry you're in. And the last place you want to add stress to is your drive. And that's what people are kind of tired of. And, you know, even for myself, I've seen it more with more congestion, more people. It's getting longer and longer to go places, and it makes people just angry. They get to their destination and they need a minute to cool off, or maybe they come home from work and their family's all over them, and they're just like, man, I just sat an hour and a half just to get home, and now my kids all want to be with my attention, and my spouse wants my attention, or my significant other, and it's it could be one of those things that could actually, unfortunately, add tension. And so there really is no way around it. We don't have a great public transportation system here. And so if it's taking you a long time to go to work and a long time to get home, or a long time to go to the beach, or a long time to get to your friend's house who lives across the city, and you decide, you know what, I've been on the freeway for 45 minutes and it's going to be another 45 minutes, I'm just going to turn around and see my friend another time. It could actually affect relationships. It affects your work. It affects family life. And so that is a big reason that people are telling me, and that I'm seeing personally, of why people are leaving LA. All right, the number 4 reason of why so many people are leaving Los Angeles is the crime. Crime has escalated quite substantially, especially since COVID, and that's been the case across the country, but it seems like it's even more so in Los Angeles. And just as personal and anecdotal experiences, I'm seeing it more on the streets, and their neighbors and friends are having their stories now. And we have pretty loose laws when it comes to certain crimes. Low-level misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies now have a zero bail policy here, where if you can't afford bail, you don't need to make bail, and you're out of custody. And a lot of times there's repeat offenders. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of crime, but there is the reality of that. When you're living in Los Angeles, an expensive place to live, and people are stealing from you, and these people are going unpunished, and then they're doing it again and again because there's no reason not to if there's no punishment. And so it just keeps feeding the crime element, and there's really no end in sight. And it kind of leads to, you're paying a couple $1 million for a home, and now you've got to worry about your car being broken into if it's not parked in the garage, or you've got these house burglary teams that are going around in all sorts of neighborhoods. And I don't care if you're living in Beverly Hills or Hollywood Hills, super high-end areas, there's rings that are going to these areas specifically and casing places and monitoring, seeing when you're not there, and they go in and out. They're in and out of a house in 5 minutes, and they've just taken cash, jewelry, and whatever else they can get their hands on. And they're not going to be found, or if they are found, again, they may be taken into custody, but they're out very soon doing it again. So it could be quite aggravating, and that crime has gone up, especially since I was a kid. I mean, when I was growing up, you left your front door open, your screen door, and it was not one of those crazy security screen doors, just a regular old rickety aluminum screen door. And that was open pretty much all night. Sometimes you fell asleep with that open. No big deal. Nowadays, there's no way. We even have to worry about our catalytic converters on our cars being stolen. Yes, there are burglary groups that come around to different cars, just unhooking your catalytic converter, and you have no idea it happens until you turn on your car and it sounds like you have no muffler, super loud, and then you realize, oh, nothing wrong with my car except that somebody stole this part to it. Sometimes you're in a supermarket, you see someone come in and just run out with a case of beer and nobody cares. And some people are wondering, well, why does an employee stop them? Well, frankly, I won't blame an employee for not stopping them. It's not really in their job, and it's unsafe to do so. And again, these people, they're going to do this and then go unpunished. They'll come back in the next day and do it again. So there is that element. Now, I'm not saying it's so bad you can't go out, leave your home, or you can't leave your car on the street. I'm just saying that there is that element, and it has increased, and we have policies in place that don't necessarily deter that crime, and hopefully that changes soon. All right, the fifth reason why so many people are leaving the city of Los Angeles is the homeless crisis here. Now, again, I'm not getting into the politics, or I'm not bashing homeless people. That's not what this is about. But it is a reason why people leave, because the homeless problem is going to be so pervasive in Los Angeles. And again, this was sparked even more during the pandemic. And we do have policies in place that allow or tolerate. But most importantly, there's policies in place that just spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the problem just gets worse and worse. And I think that's what people are most fed up about, is our tax dollars, our charity dollars are going to these programs that don't do anything and don't address the real problem. There's a lot of mentally ill people. There's a lot of people with substance abuse, and we're not getting to the root cause of homelessness. People want to blame the cost of housing and the housing crisis. And while there is a certain element to that, that's more of a reason why people are leaving voluntarily Los Angeles to go find housing that is less expensive. It's not necessarily the main factor of putting people on the streets. Again, it goes back to mental health and substance abuse, and we need to address those issues. But while all that's not being addressed, we have policies in place and neighborhood councils in place that almost encourage tent cities. You go under freeway passes and you'll see 20 tents lined up. The city provides portable bathrooms and showers. Sometimes there's security around there. And it's really affecting the neighborhoods, the people that would normally walk by on these streets with their kids. They don't do so anymore because you're seeing drug paraphernalia, you're seeing needles, you're seeing broken glass from alcohol everywhere, and just the uncleanliness of the streets just makes it where you don't want to walk by that. And it's affecting businesses because they're right next to businesses, and no one wants to go to those businesses because they don't feel safe and it doesn't feel clean. And so this has led to a lot of homeless on our beaches, in our parks, people where you take your families. And we're seeing this in all sorts of neighborhoods. Now, granted, yes, you're not going to see them in the Santa Monica Hills or the Hollywood Hills or in a lot of parts of Beverly Hills, but you still see them in really high-end places that are not in the hills. And so you walk out or drive out, from your $2 million, $3 million home, and right down the road you have a homeless encampment. It's just a weird juxtaposition where there's a lot of money in LA. There's a ton of money, and yet there's a lot of people that need help. And it's clear as day because they're right there in front of us, and they're being ignored in so many ways and not being helped. And it's a lot of people are just fed up with it. They're fed up with their tax dollars being wasted. They're fed up with the crime that comes with that element, and they're fed up with the uncleanliness and a city that's doing really nothing to address the root problem. So they're deciding to leave, and that's what a lot of my clients are talking about, and a lot of friends and family have done so already. So now I laid out some of the top 5 reasons of why so many people are leaving Los Angeles. There is another element to this, and it is a political element. There's a lot of people that may not necessarily follow the politics or align themselves with the politics in Los Angeles. Now, again, this is not a political channel, and I'm not going to speak to that, but that is another element. If that is something that you want more information on, I suggest maybe taking a look at other channels. But I will mention that because I don't want to be called out for not mentioning it, but I'm not going to get into politics in this video. Now, even with all of these reasons that I just laid out about why so many people are leaving Los Angeles, leaving California in general, there are still thousands and thousands of people wanting to move to Los Angeles and who live in Los Angeles that will never move. And there are many reasons why that is so. Make sure you check out some of my other videos on this channel and you'll see why. And again, my real estate team loves helping people relocate to and from Los Angeles. So if you are thinking about making the move, make sure you reach out to us. Hit us up with a phone, call, text, email, whatever is easier for you. We've got your back when moving to LA.